There were bestseller books, magazine cover stories, TV interviews.
The question first is that whether I committed murder.
Did you?
Before Charles Sobhraj's life story would be turned into an 8-part Netflix and BBC series titled The Serpent, which is seriously addictive. You should definitely check it out.
I expected to feel great guilt. I did not. I felt free.
Before Charles Sobhraj would be responsible for the death of at least 12 people and escaped from prison at least 4 times.
But no luck today, the Nepal Supreme Court has rejected the appeal of the serial killer and notorious conman Charles Sobhraj, upholding that life sentence.
Before Charles Sobhraj would return to Nepal as a free man in 2003, only to get arrested again and ordered to life imprisonment, which he is currently serving. Nicknamed the Serpent and the Bikini Killer, Charles Sobhraj was convicted and jailed in India from 1976 to 1997, but managed to live a life of leisure even when in prison. After his release, he retired as a celebrity in Paris, and with Hollywood interested in making a movie about his life, the dude could have gotten away with it all until he decided to take a trip back to Nepal. While Sobhraj is widely believed to be a psychopath, a man with a manipulative personality and incapable of remorse, his motives for killing differed from those of most serial killers. He wasn't driven to murder by violent impulses, but rather for personal gain, to sustain his status, his lifestyle, and to pursue his next adventures. His life has already been the object of 4 books and 3 documentaries, and the recent Netflix special had me and Michael glued to our seat. So we decided to take a look at his life and career here for you in a video we have titled Before They Were Infamous. My name is Kara the Vampire Slayer. For those of you who don't know, I'm Michael's fiance. I host videos on our second channel, Famous Entertainment, and on my personal channel, Kara the Vampire Slayer. There I like to investigate creepy stories and infamous criminals like Charles Sobhraj and Joseph Fritzl. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe if you're into more of this kind of stuff, and I'll see you guys after the intro. Charles Sobhraj was born Hachand Bhawani Gurmukh Charles Sobhraj on April 6, 1944, the illegitimate son of a Vietnamese peasant girl and a wealthy Indian merchant living in Saigon. Soon after his birth, Sobhraj's father remarried and his mother retaliated by wedding a French military officer when Sobhraj was 4 years old. His homeland was in turmoil at the time, with French colonial troops fighting against Vietnamese communist rebels, and a young Charles witnessed countless acts of violence before his stepfather took the family to France in 1953. Charles's stepfather had suffered shell shock during a battle and for the rest of his life was in and out of hospitals for post-traumatic stress disorder, looking at a young Charles as a drain on their scarce family resources. Charles hated Europe and the Catholic boarding school in Paris, where he soon became the butt of racial jokes and insults. He suffered early childhood abuse and there was an injury to his brain. In an effort to fit in, he adopted the first name of Charles after Charlie Chaplin, the famous mime that a young Charles would impersonate for fun. As a child, he was neglected by his parents in favor of his half-siblings and showed signs of bad behavior, throwing temper tantrums and often wetting the bed. He would run away from home and by his early teens had turned to petty theft as a means to make money. He served his first jail sentence for burglary at the Poissy prison near Paris. Charming and manipulative even in his teens, he convinced the prison officials to let him have reading material and began studying the legal system. While incarcerated, he met a wealthy man named Felix Descong who volunteered in the prison. After his parole, Felix let Charles stay at his house and introduced him to the high society of Paris and the criminal underworld. Then Charles met a young French woman named Chantal Compagnon, who he married despite getting arrested again and imprisoned for 8 months for committing an array of crimes, including carjacking and forgery. By 1970, his wife was pregnant with their child. To escape another arrest, they left France and traveled through Eastern Europe using fake passports and bouncing checks. They would also con foreigners out of money. The young couple eventually arrived in Bombay, which is now Mumbai, where Chantal gave birth to their daughter Usha. In Bombay, he set up shop as an international conman and smuggler, specializing in the theft of passports from American and European tourists, bank robbery, and carjacking. He was arrested again for a jewel robbery at Hotel Ashoka in Delhi, and despite a failed escape, Charles was granted bail. That's what I call charming. From there, he fled to Afghanistan, where he was jailed for auto theft and some lesser charges. Another escape brought him back to France, where he kidnapped his infant daughter from his mother-in-law, leaving the woman drugged and locked in a hotel room. Needless to say, that first marriage didn't last. In India, Charles met Marie-Andrée Leclerc, who was named Monique in The Serpent. She was a tourist looking for adventure from Lavish, Quebec, Canada. Charles's first known murder victim was a Pakistani chauffeur named Habib. Charles had hired him to drive him between Rawalpindi and Peshawar. Along the way, Charles injected Habib with a drug that took his life, and he dumped the driver's body in a river. Then, in November of 1973, Charles was in Istanbul teaming up with his half-brother Andre, where they traveled between Turkey and Greece, drugging and robbing wealthy tourists. Both were arrested in Greece, but Charles managed another escape, convincing his half-brother to swap identities. He left him in jail with an 18-year sentence as he fled back to India. In Delhi, he entered the heroin trade, gaining a foothold in the cutthroat business with inside information procured, under drugs and torture, from a local pusher whom Charles later killed. Murder seemed to come easier each time. In October 1975, Charles killed an American tourist, Teresa Knowlton, in his Delhi flat and had his sidekick Ajay Chowdhury dump her body. Next was a Turkish competitor in the drug trade, Vitaly Hakim, who was beaten, his neck snapped, and his corpse doused with gasoline and set afire. In Bangkok, Charles strangled Hakim's French contact Stephanie Perry. Months later, still in Bangkok, he strangled Dutch tourists Cornelia Hemker and Henriques Bitania, burning their bodies in hopes they wouldn't be identified. If you're watching The Serpent, this is where the 8-part series kicks off, which is crazy knowing how many crimes he had pulled off previous to those heinous acts. His next act of evil took place in Nepal on Canadian tourist Laurent Carrière and American tourist Connie Bronzik, who were both found dead in Kathmandu. Their bodies also burned. The killer continued his aimless trek across Asia, murdering Israeli Alan Jacobs for his passport at Varanasi in northern India. A few days later, on January 9, 1976, Charles and 2 accomplices drugged a trio of Frenchmen at Goa, dumping their bodies on the roadside. Luckily, these 3 victims managed to survive. With police closing in, he took one last shot to go big or go home when he drugged an entire class of 60 French engineering students. His miscalculation of the dose sent 20 to a local hospital, and this time police were hot on his heels. He was arrested on July 5, 1976, and Charles had been linked with at least 10 homicides spanning the past 3 years. Initially, he was sentenced to only 7 years of hard labor, with 2 more years tacked on for drugging the 60 French students. Sobhraj told journalist Richard Neville during his trial in India, "If I've ever killed or have ordered killings, then it was purely for reasons of business. Just a job like a general in the army." He served his sentence in Tihar jail, where he bribed the officers and led a lavish life on the inside. He would have guests free to come and go as they pleased, access to a cell phone, TV, gourmet food, and fine wine to drink. He gave several interviews where the murders came up in conversations, but he never admitted to them. He was well aware of the 20-year-old's still valid Thai arrest warrant against him. He knew that he would be turned over to the Thai authorities and face almost certain execution as soon as he was released. In 1986, he drugged the prison officials and other inmates in a party that he himself had organized and casually walked out of one of the most secure prisons in India. He was caught in Goa just as he intended and served 10 more years in an Indian prison. He became a free man on February 17, 1997. Having no warrant, evidence, or even witnesses against him, the Indian government let him go back to France. He was in talks with Hollywood to have a film made about his life story. His asking price was $15 million. Sobhraj spent the next 6 years in Paris, where he employed a publicity agent and charged a considerable amount of money for interviews and photographs. In 2003, he was recognized in the streets of Kathmandu, Nepal by a journalist who informed the authorities. He was arrested on the 19th of September in the Yak and Yeti Hotel's casino. Charged with the murders of Bronzik and Carrière, he was given a life sentence on August 20th, 2004. The verdict was upheld by the Supreme Court of Nepal on July 30th, 2010. Till this day, he is behind bars, and his attempts to be pardoned have been overturned. If you're wondering why he chose to return to Nepal, Charles has been tight-lipped on why exactly he took such a risk. The most widespread belief is that interest in his life story from Hollywood was waning and he needed more publicity to get people interested in him again. It was a risk he was willing to take and one that ended up costing him his freedom. He married a local woman while behind bars. We're gonna wrap up this video here, but be sure to check out my personal channel, Kara the Vampire Slayer, and subscribe for more creepy videos like this one. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!